Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome into another edition of GC Live Talking Tuesday Nights. I'm Mike Yuva, and alongside me, as always, is the one and only Intern Joe.
Yes, sir, baby.
We know we got some hoops going on tonight. If you're watching it, I hope you have a bottle next to you, that emergency stash. But we will talk some hoops. We will talk some hoops. Obviously, football, because football is year-round, as we know in Columbia. Apologize for the audio being a little bit off on my end if it is. But Intern Joe, let's get into it, okay? And this is where I'm going to start. You know, typically we have kind of a little rundown of what we're getting into. You don't even know what we're getting into tonight. This is where we're going to begin things, okay? We sit here now on January 17th, okay? January 17th. We are just over 2 weeks away, okay? Tomorrow would be officially 2 weeks, but we are 2 weeks and 1 day away from the second National Signing Day of the academic year. Now, obviously, that first week in February, that first Wednesday, it's not what it used to be. All right, we know that. It's not what it used to be because you have that December signing day.
Yeah.
However, for South Carolina, that day is going to be still very, very interesting because Nicholas Harbor is still in the mix. Our colleague, Wes Mitchell, what's that?
I said very much so. Absolutely.
Our colleague, Wes Mitchell, he talked about it today with our other colleague, Kendall Smith. We'll share some of the thoughts that Wes had. And if you're not already a GC subscriber, I would highly, highly, highly recommend subscribing to Gamecock Central today. You can do that today leading up till August 31st for just $29.99. Chris Clark did a great breakdown of where not just Nicholas Harbor, that situation currently stands, but some of the other players to keep an eye on as we inch closer to that February 1st date. So I bring all that up, Intern Joe, right? Where South Carolina is right now in terms of what they've done from a recruiting class standpoint. I know that some people would like to see a little bit more. I get it. I understand. But as I've stated before over the last couple of weeks, where USC currently ranks, okay, where South Carolina currently ranks for this year's class, they have 50%. They have broke that 50% point where they have more blue chip players.
Yeah.
That hasn't been the case in quite some time. I think they had it maybe once in the Muschamp era. It was at 50, and then you'd have to really go back to the Spurrier days. So I bring all that up because, yes, I understand, okay, they're ranked 17th nationally. Of that 17th ranked nationally for recruiting for 2023, they're 8th in the SEC. We understand that it's a beast in the SEC, not just on the field, but in recruiting. So it's obviously always going to be difficult. But I feel like where we've seen South Carolina come from in the last couple of years, okay, where we've seen them come from over the last couple of years, and just to throw some numbers out at you, okay, 2021, South Carolina ranked 79th in the country when it came to recruiting. Last year, they ranked 28th. This year, they currently rank 17th. What does not factor in here is what South Carolina has done in the transfer portal. We can get into that in a little bit. Obviously, not as much noise in comparison to last year when you talk about big names, but I still feel like they've done a pretty solid job in terms of the needs of positions when it comes to the portal this year.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. I think 17, obviously they can improve on that. Nicholas Harbor would be, jump them up pretty high. And I mean, 17 is a number that fans shouldn't necessarily be disappointed with. Like, obviously, you're going to have your people that are going to be like, oh, they should be in the top 15 after beating, 2 top 10 teams back to back, like the way they finished off the season. And, that's fine. But, I mean, honestly, 17 it's better than it has been, right? It's starting to build momentum piece by piece. And you said it too, Mike, it doesn't really factor in, the transfer class as much or as heavily. So I think it's a big it's big that they're in the top 20 because there's room to grow with the February signing date, obviously with Harbor and whatnot. And I mean, the 2024 class already looks really, really good. And there's still plenty of room to grow there. But I mean, that's another thing too. When you look at this year's signing class, the 2023 class, obviously, 17, 18, top 15 range if they get Harbor. But when you look to 2024, it's only going to go up. It's only improving. It's piece by piece, little by little. So, I mean, Mike, it's hard to, compare it right now because you haven't gotten to the February signing date. But, I mean, as of now, sitting at 17, considering the last couple of years and where Muschamp had the program and everything like that, I'd say it looks pretty good, at least on paper right now. And then obviously plenty of work to be done in February.
No question about it. And again, if you have not checked it out already, head on over to GamecockCentral.com. Nice breakdown in today's insider report from Chris Clark. But intern Joe, if you could, I'd love if you'd be able to pull up that video from earlier today with Wes Mitchell and Kendall talking about Nicholas Harbor. And because look, again, you're seeing a lot of players make that commitment a little bit earlier, right? But some players will still wait. And, from talking to people closer to the situation, the situation that was going on over at Michigan, it was one that was a roller coaster and is still a roller coaster for Harbor. And I just bring all that up because, as Wes Mitchell pointed out today, South Carolina, he feels like they're in a good position to be able to land him. Does that mean he's going to sign on the dotted line for USC? No. Okay. We're not putting words into Wes's mouth or, Gamecock Central, Mike saying that. No. What we're saying is they're in a good position. Okay. They're certainly in the mix. And when you're dealing, and we've said this before, and I know Wes, Chris, they've probably said something like this to the effects of this over the last couple of years because they've been doing this for a hell of a lot longer than I have. And they are two of the best in the business at it, especially when it comes to the Gamecocks. When you're dealing with 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, you have no idea what the hell they're thinking until the very, very final minute when they actually put pen to paper. I mean, we've seen this with even Jordan Birch in the past, right? The situation over at Hammond, where it took a little bit longer until he actually signed on the dotted line. I'm not trying to go back and bring back bad memories but the point being is until it's actually done, you really don't know what the hell is going on. You can know to an extent. You can feel good about it. And I think that's kind of where South Carolina is right now. So again, where we see USC climbing in those recruiting rankings, certainly what happens with Harbor in 2 weeks and a day from now will make a big impact. I know some people are asking about where Harbor will be playing. We know that he's someone that can play on both sides of the ball. And again, there's more information in Chris's piece. I'm looking at some of it right now just to make sure that I'm on the same page, and I don't want to be giving some away from it because it's behind a paywall on our website. But the thing with Harbor is he's someone that South Carolina can, again, he wants to play on the offensive side of the ball. He's a guy that can be a game changer there. And I think, look, too, when you look at what South Carolina has done this offseason by being able to retain Spencer Rattler, by being able to retain Juice Wells, by being able to bring a guy in with a pro-style mindset in Dow Loggins. Again, I know that there's some people, they're not sold on the hire yet. I understand that. And as I've brought up over the last couple, I'd say weeks now, Dow has done an outstanding job from a recruiting standpoint, which was one of the bonuses of being able to bring him in. That was something that he did a tremendous job at Arkansas. He was one of the best, if not the best recruiter the Hogs had. So when you brought him in here, yes, I understand ultimately at the end of the day, he's going to be judged for what he does as a play caller. But at the same time, too, when we're talking about college coaches, right? Because you say, okay, maybe he didn't have the type of success in the eyes of some fans in the NFL. Well, you're dealing with recruiting too. It's the complete package. I understand, again, he has to do a good job as a play caller, has to do a good job. There's going to be some challenges that he faces. It's going to be uphill battle. And some of that's going to have to do with the fact of the offensive line, which I want to get into because that's what I wrote about on Gamecock Central yesterday. Intern Joe, this was from today with our colleagues, Wes Mitchell and Kendall Smith. We won't play the whole video, of course, but just wanted to play some of it because, again, this is the snippet. Okay, we can play this whole thing. This is just not – I just want to make sure I read that right. Just to give people kind of an update as to what's going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looks like the audio's off, Intern Joe. See if we can figure something out there.
Yeah.
If not, we will just play the audio on our end. I'll play the audio from my end, and we can.
Yeah. All right, try this. You hear that?
That's strange, Intern Joe. I don't know why the audio is not playing. What we'll do is, hey, you're giving it your best, Intern Joe. Here's what we're going to do, okay? This is what we're going to do. I'm going to pull it up from the audio. We will listen to the audio. Apologize for the technical difficulty. That put Intern Joe
We're trying.
into the fire.
We're trying.
We will, this is what we're going to do, okay? I will bring up the audio. Again, guys, with everything going on, and I know, and I see Kevin talking about this. Harbor dropped in rankings. Is that because he wants to just be a tight end, or is it because people think he's leaning towards South Carolina? Let's listen to Wes first, and then we'll get into some of this. Okay. Get you the audio. Bear with us, everybody, as we try to make a quick pivot here. Talking about Nicholas Harbor. Again, this is from today with our colleagues, Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark. Wes Mitchell and Kendall Smith, excuse me. And if you want to watch the full video, you can go on over to YouTube and catch that because they did an outstanding job as we get ready for the second National Signing Day. But here's a little bit.
Nick is considered. Are the Gamecocks still kind of hanging tough with some of these other big-time programs that Nick is considering?
Yeah, Kendall, they are in it. I would dare say they have quietly positioned themselves. I think it's hard to say they're the favorite, but they have quietly positioned themselves in a really, really good spot. I think South Carolina feels great about where they are right now. They've really kind of tag teamed his recruitment. They've obviously had Sterling Lucas involved, Shane Beamer involved, Jody Wright involved. So you're talking about giving him the opportunity to play offense, play defense if he wants, and kind of just play whatever he wants at South Carolina. So I think as this thing, you're getting to the finish line, right? So all the final recruiting pitches are being made. South Carolina is planning on having several coaches at his track meet on Friday. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. And, you got this Oregon visit this month, official visit that I think looms large for all the schools involved. I think they're going to be a factor in the end. Michigan, of course, Harbaugh has been flirting with NFL teams. The reports right now on Tuesday are that Harbaugh is probably staying at Michigan. So I think that's a factor here as well. All-out push from all these schools. It's been a marathon. Now it's a sprint to the end for who is the number one athlete in the 2023 class, 5-star guy who is just really one of the best pure athletes I've probably seen since I've been covering recruiting.
Again, that was our colleague Wes Mitchell on the recruiting rundown with our other colleague Kendall Smith. You can check out that full video on Gamecock Central's YouTube page. If you haven't subscribed already, it's free. You can catch a lot of the shows that we do, replay of this show, and not just GC Live, but breakdowns too. Just breakdowns throughout the week. Basketball, football, baseball season, of course, is right around the corner. We'll have some baseball in there as well. So to go back to Wes's point, because again, I was mentioning what Kevin was saying. We're talking about the tight end position. It seems like at least South Carolina is not closing off the possibility of him playing edge. And I think it's one of those things right now that, look, does he want to play offense? Does he want to play defense? Okay, maybe he but the point being is if he goes to South Carolina, and I'm not saying that, Michigan doesn't have this ability or wherever, right? But if he comes to South Carolina, I feel like he's the type of player, and I'm sure this would be the case for some of these other schools. He's the type of player that goes in there. Hey, Shane, hey, Coach Beamer, I want to go play here. This is what I want to do. And let's just say, hypothetically, if he were to play defense, okay, do you really think he's not going to be used in some type of package on offense? I mean, come on. I'm not saying he's going to be the type of guy that's like Deion Sanders back in the day playing two-way. I'm not saying it's going to be like that. But I think the point being is South Carolina is throwing everything at him, absolutely everything. And specifically when we talk about offense, when you talk about pro style, right? When you talk about pro style, the tight end position, it's evolved so much. It's not just happening at the college level. It's not just happening at high school, which, I mean, I feel like more than anything, what we've seen over the years, it's kind of been like, all right, you got a quick tight end. What do? You kind of just put him in the slot and you let him play receiver, essentially. He's going to have an opportunity to learn from a guy that has NFL knowledge of offensive playbooks. Okay. And I do think that, yes, I understand there's going to be people that say, well, he didn't have success in the NFL. Look at the teams he was coaching. Look at some of the talent he had to work with, okay? I mean, he wasn't coaching the freaking Patriots when they were on a roll. He wasn't coaching, Pat Mahomes. I mean, so, again, that's not to say that he can't have success at the college level, all right? And I don't want to go down the list and be like, all right, well, look at this coach and what he's been able to do from a college standpoint, or look at this guy's done it from a pro standpoint. I mean, I just feel like the biggest challenge South Carolina is going to face, so we can get into it a little bit more in turn, Joe, is more so just the rapport on the offensive line, which I wrote about on Gamecock Central yesterday, because they're losing more than 50% of their starting snaps up front from this past season. So that's one thing I'd say, will be the biggest challenge for Dal Loggins more than anything. But as far as Harbor goes, I think it's a positive. Certainly having Harbaugh in Michigan, of course, college playoff football team last year, this past season. Of course, Michigan's it's an easy sell out there. Of course. But we understand, especially if you follow this team, you're a fan of this program, you understand things are changing in Columbia. Are they in the level of Michigan right now? No. Okay. It's okay to acknowledge that. But that's not to say Harbor doesn't want to be part of that. And when you're part of something, especially with changing a program, as we saw many, many, many players, some of those guys were in-state guys, some of those guys were out-of-state guys that came to South Carolina during the highest of highs for USC about a decade plus ago. It can happen. We've seen it happen. Harbor could be that missing piece. He could be that missing piece, Joe. And again, going back to what Wes was reiterating, USC's right there in the mix. They're right there in the mix. And that's really all you could ask for 2 weeks and a day out from signing day.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, you brought up the offensive line. I think that is going to be the biggest challenge. You lose, 4 or 5 guys that have been on the offensive line since, they were freshmen, sophomores. Joe Von Gwynn's a great example. Once he got cracked into the starting lineup, he didn't really leave it. Same thing with Eric Douglas. He's another one of those guys, unless, he got banged up with an injury and had to be held out. Once he made it into the starting lineup, he was there consistently. And that's always a big thing on the offensive line is that, you have to have guys that consistently play with each other, and it's a camaraderie thing. So I think that is kind of a big sell too, from Loggins and Beamer's standpoint, is that it is a fresh start for the offensive line, and it's a fresh start for that group. And in terms of Harbor too, everything that I'm hearing, it's going to be more offensive focused, and then defense is a plus. But you never know. As soon as he gets here, it could change. But I also liked your point about this program being on the come up. It's a big thing because it's not like it's the Gamecocks are rebuilding, right? It's not like they're at the bare bones and still at the bottom of the SEC, kind of like Vanderbilt was last year and even this year. I think it's a big sell because you're on the cusp of that, right? You're on the cusp of competing in that next level of if you will, that next tier of the SEC. And so I think that's a huge sell is like, hey, look, we're right here. And if we got you, we would, it'd be, the next jump, the jump to the next level if we had you. I think it's a big sell. And I did see an interview earlier today with Harbor, and he said one thing that he was surprised about was the first man to greet him off the plane was Shane. Beamer was right there, and he said it surprised him because he asked, he's like, who is this guy? And it's like, oh, that's the head coach. It's like, oh, wow. From his first visit right away, he was impressed with that. And, it's a true testament to the kind of recruiter that Shane is too, adding the personal touch, really making people, feel at home. So the welcome home thing couldn't be any more true when he says that. He really wants, recruits and people to make this home because it's home for him. It's home for everybody else here. So the environment and everything, it's such an easy sell for him because Shane is, right at home. And so I think that's another big piece too, with the family and every aspect of the program. You look at a guy like Pup Howard, Pup has always talked about how, inside the building, it's a family, and that's something he wanted to be a part of. And the tweet from Kai Kroger, I believe, that all we got is all we need. And that kind of thing. Guys are sticking with each other and bonding, and, it's just such a tight-knit thing. And so I think it's a really big sell, especially going back to the offensive line point. When you want to create something with the offense, especially coming up this next fall with, Spencer and Juice coming back, there's a chance Harbor could play right away. Absolutely, there's 1,000, a really, really good chance he could play right away. And having Spencer and Juice come back, it even more incentive to, come back, compete right away, or come to South Carolina and compete right away. So I think it's a big sell, especially too, like I said, the main point being that, you're on the cusp of jumping tiers in the SEC. So why not come here and play and help the program advance further? And you've seen the growth too in the first 2 years of the Beamer era. You've seen the growth already. Imagine, what it could do if Nick Harbor came here. The sell is, imagine what we could do if we had you, kind of thing. But yeah.
So one thing I will say too, though, as our situation goes, when you see numbers start to move around a little bit, I understand from a fan stance, it's real easy to say, oh, it's things are moving because maybe he's leaning towards South Carolina. Is it the South Carolina jinx, if you will, right? Or the impact of signing with the Gamecocks, where you feel like some of your players, some of the signees, their ranking, their star system is going down a little bit. Oh, I've always looked at it, intern Joe. Who the hell cares? Who the hell cares? Really? Who cares? Now, again, I understand when we sit here, we're talking about recruiting classes, right? When you factor all in the formula, this recruiting, because we spent some time talking about it, right? We spent some time. If Nicholas Harbor signs at South Carolina, they're going to be better than what they currently are right now, which is what, 17th? Is that what we just said? 17th right now.
They'll jump into the top 15
now. The recruiting class in the nation. Okay, they're going to be better than that. Whether they're, and I'm just making this up, whether they're the Eighth bad. Does it really freak? Does it really? Again, there's going to be people out there that want to see. I get that. They want to see their team. I understand Harvard's coming to South Carolina or another high 4-star or, again, obviously Harvard's a 5, but, a low 5, whatever the case may be. They're coming to South Carolina. Who the hell cares how many stars they have? Okay, I understand this is a recruiting website that we work for over at Gamecock Central and On3, and I'm not trying to bash the whole system. Okay, I understand how important it is. I had a conversation with a Gamecock fan just the other day, and how much I wouldn't say their lives, people's lives revolve around it, but to an extent it does. So I understand all that, but my whole, if you're able to land a player, especially one as talented as Nicholas Harbor, right? Whether or not he is, 5-star plus, whether he is, being ranked as this for as many athletes, whatever the case, if he's coming to your school, okay, as soon as he makes that commitment, none of that matters. And I'm not trying to badmouth student athletes, okay, but we're talking players, making NIL. We're talking about some big boys here now, okay? We're in the SEC. Go ask Jordan Birch how much that mattered. Go ask that to fans that on his way out, they were saying, oh, this is how many sacks he had in 3 seasons. Do you think they really care, looking back at it now, as to what Jordan Birch did? And again, this isn't picking on Birch. This is just the whole conversation of people losing their freaking mind sometimes when a player signs with a school and they drop down. About that, you want the narrative to change? Go out there and win games. That's what South Carolina is doing right now. And at the end of the day, the hell cares? Who cares what you're ranked nationally when it comes to a recruiting class? Is that going to win you games? I understand it's easy to go out there and pick. Yeah, athletes know what's going on, right? Harvard signs to South Carolina. Do you think there's going to be a player out there saying, "Oh, South Carolina is only ranked 12th now nationally"? You know what? Yeah, Nicholas Harbor went, but they're only ranked 12th now. You really think that kid cares? No. So that's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is don't get so caught up in what the national recruiting ranking is for South Carolina. I'm not saying it's not fun to talk about. I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything. It means something to someone. But that's what I would say about that. That is just, and Kevin brings up, it's all about the development. No question. It's all
Absolutely
about the development and the staff. You look at, this is a new staff. I mean, I know it's easy to mention Birch, right? And I do feel like he kind of, he way out, which I understand fans are going to be upset about. He did have one of his better seasons this past year. I think there were stats, people have thrown stats on. He only had 4 sacks. Okay. Just so, but the whole point being is none of that stuff matters from Birch or that recruiting class as a whole now, does it? That's what I'm trying to get at. Is that don't on some of these little things. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter unless the player goes out there and execute. It doesn't matter what the recruiting class is if it doesn't amount to anything. And as Kevin brings up, it's all about being able to develop. No question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've got a little bit of lag here, so forgive me. But I think, Kevin's point is exactly right. It is all about development. And I think bringing in Dowell Loggins is a good start. This will be the first year. And it's another pitch from Dowell, too, is like, hey, let's build this thing from the ground up, build the offense from the ground up. But it is all about development. And you can point to a couple players who really made, a name for themselves in developing. One first guy on my mind is Marshawn Lloyd. Now, granted, he wasn't, one of Beamer's guys that he recruited, but you saw the development in from as soon as Beamer got here, you saw the development in Marshawn Lloyd. You saw the development in other players in the program. Say a Boogie Huntley. Boogie Huntley's year this year was far and away a lot better than his years previously. So I think and two, even look at a guy like Nick Eamon-Wari, what 1 year in the system can do. Nick Eamon-Wari is a freak athlete and so talented, and got here with the gifts he was given by God, and that's a large portion of why he's playing. But also look at his football smarts. Look what Clayton White did to him in only a year, making the SEC freshman team. I think it's a big thing to point to, especially for a guy like Harvard too. It's like, hey, look at this. It's on the defensive side of the ball. Look what you can do in this system, and look how big you can get and grow and do all of that. It's a really big selling point.
No question about it, intern Joe. No question about it. I do want to go back, though, and hit on a couple questions that people have. Provide as much information as we can to some of those. I know, obviously, one of the bigger stories within the last, 24, 48 hours. Bring up the question here from Lance about Trojan Jeffcoat. I know that there was a lot of backlash yesterday, about the admissions department at South Carolina. And all I'll say right now is, there's a couple things that need to play out. I think more than anything, it's just because of the history, right? You talk about, I mentioned this from an offensive standpoint, the PTSD this fan base has because of the number of OCs USC has gone through over the last couple of years. Because I think PTSD from a admission standpoint, even though it's, you go back to the Spurrier days, it's because of the fans' minds, right? It's hard to forget that. So I bring that up because I saw, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Wes or Chris. I haven't had a chance to talk with those two guys to be able to confirm anything. So this is why when I bring stuff up like this, I always say, this is according to whoever. We don't, have any confirmation quite yet. But trying to make sure I have this here. Okay. So this is from SC Sports Talk Radio. It says, per source this afternoon, efforts continue to have the Gamecock officials accept transfer DN John Jeffcoat into the program. They have until midnight tonight to get him in. The issue against Jeffcoat dates back to his early years at Missouri and is not academic. Again, this is according to SC Sports Talk Radio. I have not talked with Chris or Wes to get any type of confirmation on their end. There may be something already on our message board that I may have missed. So if I do see that, then I will keep you posted. It looks like Chris Clark actually has some updates here, so I apologize to Chris. But my whole point being is, it's easy to look at things like that and just instantly want to be like, but again, if you are a subscriber to Gamecock Central, I would highly recommend to go check out Chris's updates. Situation where Jeff is, as Chris stated today at 3:15, or this may have been yesterday at 3:15. I know he's been updating it today and yesterday. It has nothing to do with an academic issue, admissions office. So just to put that out there, because again, that was a narrative that was kind of floating around. And sorry about the breakup fix for next week. So, but I do want to answer your question though, because you did bring something up about Corey Rucker, our good friend, SC Scout guy. Mike, you said you would explain the Corey Rucker situation in more detail once he found a new team. Why didn't he play this year? Well, I'll say this about Corey. And it's not going to be like the sexiest story, but a lot of it just had to do with the fact that he was just battling that injury, right? He was battling that injury. He wasn't used to being in a situation like he was in Carolina, where he wasn't the big fish in the small pond anymore. So getting hurt early on in the year put him behind the 8 ball a little bit, and he got discouraged. There's no question about it. He got discouraged, but he was able to pick himself up. But unfortunately, that same injury, it changed everything. And just from a mental standpoint, it took an absolute toll on him. And it stinks. It stinks because, Corey, from getting to know Corey, even away from football, he's a young man that when he does something, he's very, very passionate. And when he's not able, and it's not like it was a USC thing, he absolutely loved South Carolina, He loved the coaches. He loved the team. Last year, it just really, really just took a toll on him. Really took a toll with the injury from a mental standpoint. And, look, I try not to share these stories when it comes to back in my day, but, I did talk with Corey about the mental side of it because Corey and I got to know each other pretty well. And one thing I told him was, because I remember him posting something that said, all I want to do is play football. And it reminded me of when I was in college and I went through an injury for a second straight year. And I remember I posted the exact same phrase that he posted him. I said, look, I know what you're going through, man. I said, I know what you're going through. I said, this will make you tougher. But it's one of those things that it can really, really just put you in a tough state of mind. And the pressure, it only cranks up when you're playing at a level like the SEC, when you're playing in South Carolina. So the pressure for Rucker, it just increases exponentially. So I bring all that up because, look, Corey is a great young man. He's a hard worker. He wants nothing but the best for this program. It had nothing to do in terms of it not, this year just took a toll on him. It just really took a toll on him. And I wish him nothing but the best. And it stinks. It stinks when things like that happen. Now, a guy that knows a thing, he's intern Joe, is Luke Doty. Where does Luke Doty stand with the team? Luke Doty's here, baby. Luke Doty is here. Luke Doty's ready to compete. Doty was going to be ready to compete regardless. But everything that I've been told, he's ready to compete, come in there, compete at quarterback. And I know it's funny for me to even have to, but I think some people are going to wonder, is this a guy that wants to go play receiver? He wants to compete at QB. And based on the situation that is currently there, okay, I understand the hype around Seller. I get that. And there's some young, talented quarterbacks in that room. Put Rattler aside, right? Rattler's your starting quarterback. When you try to figure out the pieces behind him, though, Doty right now is the number 2 guy. Doty is the number 2 guy. God forbid anything happened to Spencer Rattler. And I don't need to tell Gamecock fans about God. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that they were playing musical chairs. 4 different guys started 2 seasons ago. Okay, obviously that 4th one being Carry on Joyner, that was by choice. But because of injuries, guys were getting shuffled around left and right. Don't go. And I don't know what it is, intern Joe. I don't know what it is about this narrative that some people have out there. And I'm not saying this about Bearcat, but some people just assume that Doty's just not happy. No, Doty's happy. He's ready to go.
He's content. He's very happy. And Mike, too, I think, one thing that we could see, Doty moving into this year, I see Mark's comment about him moving to receiver. You look at a guy like on Joyner, a guy that can do it all, and you see Doty has played receiver before. I mean, you could see a Doty package in there too this year with Loggins. Loggins could get creative with Doty. But, primarily he is right now the backup, but he will compete for the starting job. Don't get me wrong.
Let me ask you this. Intern Joe, I want to ask you this, and Mark and anyone else in the comments section weigh in, okay? If you felt like, I want you to put your Coach Beamer hat on, you too, Mark, and anyone else out there. If you feel like, because again, we don't know this answer right now, but if you feel like Doty is your best second option right now at quarterback, okay? I'm not saying that you necessarily agree with that. I'm not saying Mark necessarily agrees with that. But again, let's say you're Coach Beamer and you believe in your heart right now that Doty on this team at quarterback. Is that worth risking him getting injured by putting in, as we know, all it takes is one play, right? All it takes is one play. Rattler goes down, again, trying to put yourself in Beamer's head, what he believes is that gap between the number 2 and the number 3 quarterback. That's a position that obviously there's going to be competition for. That's not even to say there's not competition already for that 3 and 2, because we don't know how Sellers is going to look. We don't know how Brandon Day, we don't know how some of these guys are going to look, especially with Sellers getting an opportunity to get in there early. So I bring that up because, yes, I hear you, Mark. I hear you, Intern Joe. Doty has a lot of talent. And I think in some way, it was one of the reasons why you saw Joyner kind of be, held up in purgatory, if you want to call it that, right? Because, yes, he's talented enough to go play at other positions, but for a while, he was the second best option at QB, and it wasn't worth risking him getting hurt if you'd put him at another position, because God forbid QB1 goes down. That would be tough. That would be tough.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you kind of beat me to it, right? I was going to bring that up. That is the question, right? Like, is it worth risking a guy who can produce at quarterback? Is it worth risking his health and then going down to a freshman or sophomore Braden Davis or a Lenore Sellers right away? Backup quarterback is a real role on the football team, like especially with a guy like talent that Doty has. It's a real thing, and you wouldn't necessarily want to, get him hurt playing some other role, and that's also why you have to carry on Joyner for those funky packages and to have fun and do all that stuff. So, I mean, it certainly is not necessarily worth it when you have a guy as dynamic as Rattler, and you're right, the whole one play thing, it can happen like that, and that's just the nature of football. And, and Doty is more than capable of stepping in and producing and winning games, especially now that he's been in the system for a while. He's been working, he's been rehabbing. And the last time we saw it, Mike, we've talked about this every time we bring up Luke Doty. The last time we saw him was when he was hurt. He was kind of thrown into the fire, just kind of like, we need a guy to play quarterback. And he was never fully healthy. He never really got his full chance to play.
And in turn, that's why, no disrespect, Stacy. Look, I love Dak. I've been on record saying that Dak might be one of my favorite human beings just who have covered in all sports. And I've covered Asia Wilson. I've covered Jackie Bradley. I've covered some really, really amazing. But I think it's just unfair to say that Doty isn't the second best option. And the reason I say that is just because we haven't seen, kind of like what Intern Joe was just saying, we haven't seen Doty healthy. The only time we've seen him healthy was when he was thrown into the fire as a freshman. And that team absolutely sucked. It sucked. They were 2-8 that year. Coach got fired. It was awful. Awful. So I say that because Doty deserves to have an opportunity. It says something that even coming back from the injury that he had last year, the fact that he was in the position to be in where he was last season speaks volumes of his toughness, but it also speaks volumes too, in my opinion, in terms of what South Carolina wanted to do from a talent standpoint and what they felt like was going to be the best option for them. But the challenge that you face, and this is one of the challenges that they face with Dakarion, right? When you have a guy, and I'm not saying Dakarion at receiver, we haven't seen him like we've had it with Dak, and I do feel like Dak's going to take that next step this year. He's going to go to that next level. I just feel like you have to weigh out the options. What is best? And it's tough sometimes, right? You have a guy as talented as Joyner. You feel like you have to put him on the field. I totally get that. But again, is it worth it if your starter goes down? Because what's that gap between your number 2 and your number 3 quarterback? There are some other questions here, but before we get to that, intern Joe, I know we have a couple ad reads. If you can get to those for us.
Yeah, I gotcha. So it is tax season once again. So tax ID is that certain uncertain feeling you get right before you do your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. Tax team in Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process to clear up any confusion and guarantee you'll get the best possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're hurting for a refund, call the team at Liberty Tax. Fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood. Open 9 to 9 weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays. Multiple service options start through the Liberty Tax mobile app or through their desktop portal. Make an appointment or walk in. Give a call to upload your tax documents when you come in. Your return will be ready to review and sign. The number is 803-462-5576. Give them a call for all your tax needs. And we are also sponsored by our good friend Clint Hammond with the Rocket Mortgage Network. Give him a call. His number is 803-576-4450. Grow up like me. I'm not looking forward to it. You got to deal with your mortgage. It is not a fun thing. So give Clint a call if you need help. Our good friend Perry Orth uses Clint for his mortgage. Great, absolutely great mortgage representative. So give Clint a call if you need help with that. And there we are, Mike. Back to basics.
Intern Joe, reading the ad reads.
I know. Change of pace.
We've had some glitch. And Stacy, Stacy, I know if you just joined us right now, I don't want to really reiterate everything that we just said earlier. But our colleague Chris Clark, as you shared on the Insider Forum yesterday, it had nothing to do with the admissions process from an academic standpoint. And SC Sports Talk Radio, they reported on that there are some things that date back to his early days at Missouri. And we'll have more of an update if there is one to have on Jeff Cope. But there was obviously a lot of speculation going on as to why it wasn't happening. Mentioned PTSD with the offense. PTSD with some of the things that took place during the Spurrier days when some players weren't able to get in because of the admissions, right? So I understand where sometimes, if that's the right word or whatever you want to call it. We'll talk about the Bojangles hard sweet tea. Had a chance to talk to some of the fine folks over at Bojangles today about it. I don't know the information that I can share and what I can't share, but what I will say is, I'll throw it out here. I mean, what's the worst that happened? They get mad at me. It will only be available in the Carolinas at first, and then it'll continue to grow. So it's going to be a good opportunity. And this is something that has been in the works for a while at Bojangles. I'm excited. I'll tell you right now, I have a feeling it's really going to take off during football season. Really have a feeling it's going to take off during football season. Couple things I do want to hit on too. The offense control right now, if you want to go check it out. Apologize again for some of the glitches. We'll get that fixed for next week. The offensive line, in my opinion, intern Joe, is going to be the biggest question mark and the biggest challenge South Carolina is going to have across the board. The edge position, I totally understand the need to get some edge guys in there. We don't know yet if Jordan Strawn's waiver is going to be approved. It looks like it's heading that way, but you can't assume anything. And let's say he is back. What does he look like coming back from an injury like that, right? An ACL injury. You just don't, you can't assume he's going to be the player of old. You hope he is, because, I mean, shoot, going into last season, in my opinion, right? I mean, we make the preseason predictions, all that. I had him leading the team in sacks. And I truly believe Arkansas game, he probably goes on to lead the team in sacks. Again, put the story up yesterday in Gamecock Central. You can take a deeper look into it. But I'll kind of hit on some of the things I mentioned. You know, when you look at the number of starts by offensive linemen last year, losing more than 50% up front. Okay? Losing more than 50%. And we don't even know what's going to happen with Wyatt Campbell yet. He does have the ability to come back an extra year because of that COVID season. He made one start on the offensive line, but I'm just throwing that out there that he could lose another start up there. That's going to be a tricky position for USC. I know some people are going to want to say, okay, what about the running back position? I know some might disagree with me. Maybe it's because I've been around New England so long with the Patriots that I've seen teams not have to have the biggest name running backs in the world to be able to get away with things, right? If you have a good offensive line, you're going to, especially if you have a guy like Spencer Rattler and a receiver like Juice. Think about it, intern Joe. What would you rather have? What would you rather have? Would you rather have an unproven offensive line, or would you rather have an unproven running back room? Obviously, people are going to be like, I'd want neither. I get that. Okay. Wise guy. Give me the proven offensive line, or give me that unit on the same page. Give me them more, have that rapport in comparison to that running back room.
Mike, to me, it's easy. I think, you'd rather have the unproven running back room. When you look at it, running backs break out all the time. You see that with guys, especially I'll think the example that I can think of is Chris Rodriguez over at Kentucky. Nobody knew who Chris Rodriguez was before he broke out. Nobody knew who he was. And then, he had the breakout season, goes for 1,000 yards, and then all of a sudden he's big bad Chris Rodriguez again. And so, that we know. And so for an offensive line, you want a group that is, cohesive. You want a group that's played together. That's something that we saw. And the reason why we saw, better offensive line play down the stretch is because that offensive line had played together for so many years, for every year that, they had been together. Like, again, I brought up Jovan Gwynn. Jovan Gwynn entered the starting lineup and never left. So you want guys like that. You would rather have a more proven offensive line. So I think, and that's going to be a big priority for Loggins and for Beamer, is to try to get their group of offensive linemen together.
Intern Joe, you're right on it. You're right on it.
It's the group.
It's the group. Because I see Travis bringing it up, and Intern Joe's all over it. Yes, they have guys that have started the last couple of years. And again, I'll go back to this story a little bit without giving, everything away here. Wanamaker, he had 4 starts last year. Okay. Moore had 8 starts. You mentioned Lee, he had 7. Nichols had. It's not necessarily guys that have started. It's guys together. And some of these guys, of course, I understand these guys have been next to each other on the off. I understand that, but it's just working all together. And again, for those asking about Jeffco, we've hit on it about like 8 times. You can go back and replay the show. And there'll be there's updates on Gamecock Central as well. But I bring this up though, intern Joe, because they're going to be able to. They have some pieces coming in here. Okay, pieces that are returning, but they also have some pieces through the transfer portal. Nick Gargiulo being one of them, comes from Yale. Even though he has experience of playing, he's a guy that's going to be in here that I expect him to be. And then you have the kid coming in from Western Illinois. So I bring that up because you do have some guys that are going to be able to hopefully provide some depth, guys that have experience, whether it be, at USC in the SEC or playing, college experience is what I'm trying to get at. But at the end of the day, like you mentioned, how quick can they be able to develop a rapport with each other? Because, you look at the schedule, and I know people are always going to gripe about the schedule. Oh, it's so hard. It's the freaking SEC. What do you expect? Okay. The crossover games, it is what it is. You get to play Vandy every year, for crying out loud. But I bring that up just because they're going to have some guys that bring some experience, but how is this all going to mesh together? And that's going to be one of the challenges, as you brought up, that Dow Loggins has to solve. Because as talented as Rattler is, as talented as Juice Wells is, as talented as those guys are, you don't have protection up front. And I think we don't know this for certain, but we don't know this for certain, but I do believe South Carolina will do more. Bring that up just because it's easier to teach. It's easier to get guys to be on the same page, especially guys that have not worked with each other on the offensive line. So that's what I would say about the offensive line. They have experience. Yes, they do have, but as a unit, they don't have proven talent together.
Yeah, like you brought up, I did want to say this about Gargiulo too. You brought him up. You want to talk about a great use of the transfer portal. Look at Nick Gargiulo, right? If we look at, go look at the NBA, you always add a veteran, for a stretch run in a position. I always look at the NBA and see, them add a veteran 3-and-D guard for a team that's ready to go to the playoffs because you need that veteran force. A guy like Gargiulo, who was, we talk about the captain thing at Yale, one of the only captains they've had in the history behind all that. It's crazy. He is the veteran of all veterans. And to have a guy like that to, not only, on the offensive line, but at center to build the offensive line around, it's huge. It cannot be understated. And that's why they went out and got a veteran center, is because you need to bring up the offensive line. You need to get somebody in there who knows how to do it, who knows how to get guys to play around him and to stay focused. And Gargiulo is all that and more, especially from what I'm hearing already. All that and more. Absolutely.
So as we continue to talk some football, I do want to throw some college basketball in there.
Yeah.
I know the last time we were on here, intern Joe, we saw a huge upset. That was to be followed by an absolute ass kicking again, which was also the case of the upset against Kentucky. 2 40-point-plus loss at home. On the outside of that upset against Kentucky. So I say all that because currently South Carolina, men's basketball, they're trailing right now 47-35. Offense, not a thing tonight. Not a thing tonight over at CLA. I've said this before, and it's just keeping it real. It's just calling a spade, right? You guys aren't stupid. You guys are smart people, most of you. I think we can all agree that when you look at the talent, Michi Johnson, but outside of him and G.G. Jackson, this is just a bunch of SoCon talent. Let's just call it for what it is. It's not trying to be mean. If your feelings get hurt by that, good Lord, I don't know what to tell you. This is a SoCon team. Okay? We knew with the move from getting rid of Frank Martin that it was going to take some time. No question about it. And while I want to say, okay, Paris, he's not going to be the guy. I think it's way too early. And I think the obstacles that were thrown in front of him, first off being the fact that he was going to lose some guys. That happened, especially in the transfer portal, right? That's going to take some time. I think the biggest thing is, and we talked about it last week when they beat Kentucky, And I think if anything, it should show that he has the ability to get guys to believe in what they're preaching. And if they can get things done, even against a Kentucky team, I know Kentucky, they're beat up this year. And I'm not talking from a health standpoint. I'm talking about mentally. They're just they're not who they've been the last couple of years. If you can get those type of players, again, this SoCon team, SoCon talent, to be able to beat Kentucky, volumes is that he can be able to keep this team together, number one, and keep players together, not just this team, but players together. What happens if they are able to have success in this year's recruiting class? What happens if they're able to have success portal in the next couple of years? Something Paris was able to have success when he was at Chattanooga. Is this Chattanooga? No. We understand that. He's not going to be able to recruit the same caliber of talent. He's going to have to get guys that are a little bit better here. But he hasn't been given that opportunity of coaching in the SEC.
Absolutely.
So, again, year one, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be an uphill battle, all right? You try to find some positives. Like I said, the fact that he was able to get this team not to feel sorry for themselves a week ago before they played Kentucky, that shows you that. However, you can't be getting, your teeth kicked in every time you step on your home court, okay? It's the moral victory right now, right? It's about moral. I can't believe I'm finding myself saying, but it's the truth. This team is just not as talented as some of the other teams in the conference. I mean, that's just calling it for what it is. So how they compete, how much effort they're putting on the court, what Paris is getting from them night in and night out is a reflection on how he can get players to believe in what they're preaching, even when times are tough. That's what I'm looking for over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point. I mean, I think Lamont Paris is a great basketball coach. We've seen that. My point about this is that it is year zero of a rebuild, right? He came in and the roster was what it was. He was able to recruit Gigi, which is great. Get a guy like Michi from the portal, awesome, great. But to have the 40-point blowout loss at home and then to go to Kentucky and do that in their building shows something. It shows that Lamont can get guys to play for him. He is more than capable of getting guys to play for him. They have the game plan. They just need to shoot the basketball. They're shooting 33.3% from the field. That's not great. That is not good at all. And so the question isn't, can Lamont get these guys to play for him? Because he's proven that. These guys want to play for Lamont Paris. He is the right guy for the job as of now. And, obviously recruiting, we'll have to see how that goes. It's way too early to tell in terms of that. But in terms of the bare bones of the basketball side of things, Lamont is the guy. He is the guy that you wouldn't want to see right now because I don't necessarily know if any other coach is going to Kentucky and beating them in that first year with the talent that they have. Obviously, Gigi's the anomaly and Michi, the Ohio State transfer. But, I mean, it's really, really hard to do, especially a blue blood like Kentucky in their own building, let alone. So I think it's big. And Lamont is finding a way to get these guys to play for them. And it's a big thing, and it's a big point, looking ahead to the future. Is
great. And again,
yeah, it's a big point.
Again, you have you have to. It's just where they are. We're gonna wrap things up in a minute. Getting a question about Stone Blanton. A little baseball talk here. Apologize for the thing cutting in and out. Just spoke with Colin Taylor. The answer is no. Is Stone Blanton playing baseball this year? According to our resident baseball reporter, Colin Taylor, that answer is no. And just focusing on football. Appreciate Colin Taylor. Juggling a couple things tonight. I'll be surprised if Gigi Jackson doesn't transfer. I think a lot of us assume that he's just going to be one and done. Now, I say a lot of us assume because I feel like it is. If I had to put a number on it, I would say it is in the high 90s. But then again, it's not the same case because obviously NBA, But I bring all this up, intern Joe, because a year ago I was saying there's no way Spencer Rattler's coming back. No way. I was saying the same stuff. So again, not apples to apples, but I guess you can never say never. I would be very shocked to see GG playing college basketball next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I I don't like the sliver of doubt that you're giving everyone, the sliver of hope, right? I mean, I would say it's a 99.0 chance. If you want to take the 1% chance of him coming back, from my eyes, I'll commit to 99.0, and you can give me the 1% chance of Gigi coming back. But I mean, his draft projections already, if he continues playing the way he has, I mean, last couple games obviously he hasn't been playing well, but the first couple games and how he's been able to develop already this year it's been night and day. And Lamont's talked about that too in his radio show. Is how Gigi's been able to develop and how he's learning and stuff like that. And you saw it. Lamont talked about it really heavily after the Georgetown win. How Gigi was able to turn it on in the second half and really just turn into a different player. And he's trying to tap in. And that's again going back to the point of Lamont Paris and give all credit to him. He's able to do that with a guy who is a raw talent like Gigi Jackson and turn him, help him grow, help him develop. That's another telling sign of a guy that you would want to coach your basketball team, especially with a program that was dead, that has been dead since Frank Martin made it to the Final Four. But I think, my 1% chance that Gigi comes back. But again, you never know. But I mean, his draft projections it's a first round pick as of now. And I mean, unless he continues to shoot in the 20% and not score in the double digits, he might be a second round pick. But even then, I could still see him leaving because the rookie minimum just keeps going up in the NBA. So I would think he finishes as a first round draft pick, maybe a lottery pick if he keeps going off. We'll have to see about that late lottery pick. But I mean, I don't necessarily see him going in the top 5, top 10. But I mean, we'll see. The 1% chance is what I'll commit. Mike said he'll give you 10, but I will give you.
And I'd be lying to you if I said, I know how NBA scouts are evaluating draft talent. I mean, we're talking about the NFL and college football. I mean, I could tell you that stuff, but I think, just from the naked eye, I think the only thing that I would say about Gigi is, it's going to be a work in progress, right? I mean, he's young, number one, that is developed yet, part, because he's been doing some good things already out there at the college level. And yes, sir, he's heading into the in SEC play now, and I'm sure teams are going to play him a little bit more physical. But that's he's going to be a project in a sense. Not saying a project that say it's going to take 3, 4, 5 years. There's a difference when you look at some of the either caliber players that have come out of South Carolina, or when you're talking about lottery players. You look at Zion Williamson. I don't think anyone's saying Gigi and Zion are on the same level, right? Coming out of high school, that is. That's all I'm talking about. That is that his body's not developed yet. So I think it's probably tricky for some to figure out, okay, how do teams want to but man, once he gets into it, I know he's in one right now, but once he gets fully developed in terms of his body with his strength, it's going to be scary because he's doing these things essentially as a string bean, so he's only going to get better. There's no question about that. Big Red, transfer dates, right? The status. When do you got to figure all that stuff out? Well, you got 2 windows during the act for players to enter the portal. It's going to remain open until January 18th. That opened up back in the beginning of December. Okay. Or I should say, closer to the beginning of December. Open up for 45 days. After that, players will need to wait for the spring window for this academic year, which runs from May 1st to May 15th. So that is the transfer portal dates. And I'll hit on this just because I know some people came a little bit late. Again, it's not an academic issue. It's not an academic issue. It is something that, as SC Sports Talk is reporting tonight, according to them, that it is something that can be resolved. But what exactly that details, I'd be lying to you if I said I know the full specifics on it to the point where I feel comfortable enough going out there and talking upon it. Just one more look, too, at the basketball score right now. So we rewind
Absolutely.
on down here. The home game. Wrong way shouldn't happen, but currently South Carolina trails Ole Miss 55-42. Ole Miss, a team that 0-3 on the road this season. A team that came into tonight last in the SEC in conference play at 0-5, and I think some people were feeling disrespected that USC was +6 going into tonight. But, I mean, look, you beat Kentucky again, which is great, but who really are you, right? Is that really you, or is it the 2 home losses by 40+? I'm not saying they're a team that is 40+ points, losing in 2 of their last 3 games. Bad. I think it's closer to that, though, certainly, than what they did against Kentucky. But you give them credit. You give them credit for what they were able to do against Kentucky. But I feel like they're a team that has a long way to go. Intern Joe, anything else you want to hit on before we wrap things up?
Not much. I did like
Cam
the
Pringle,
question.
of course, big weekend with Cam Pringle this week. No question about it. And I can tell you right now, Dante Reno and guys with that, even 2023 guys, they are make sure Pringle commits to the Gamecocks in the near future. Sorry to cut you off, Intern Joe.
No, you're good. I also heard Dylan Stewart might be visiting as well, along with a couple other guys. But no, I mean, last thing I wanted to touch on, just kind of a fun note to end it off on, was SC Scout Guy's question about who from the football team would make an immediate impact to improve the team. If we factor in recruits, Xavion Hardy, the defensive tackle, I've ranted and raved about this clip for quite some time, especially on the recruiting show that we did. Xavion Hardy hoops, and he is a very, 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 very talented basketball player. So, I mean, that would be my pick. I also saw Billy's comment about Nicky Minwari. That's another guy. And I've also heard, I believe Kai Kroger played basketball in high school. Heard he's got a mean jump shot. But yeah, no, I wanted to get to that question. It's quite a fun one. Definitely fun to think about those hypotheticals. And also, too, give credit where it's due, because, I mean, football guys are freakishly athletic.
And as a side note, DC team will be at full strength in a couple weeks. I will be heading back down to cover National Signing Day for a couple of days in South Carolina. So looking down there. And, of course, the big news is hopefully one with Nicholas Harbor. Hopefully he's signing with the Gamecocks. Again, if you missed the beginning of the show, you can go back and watch it on the Gamecock Central YouTube page, as our colleague Wes Mitchell mentioned today. You can watch that full video of his breakdown. See Football Stand right now did a great job with Kendall Smith. That South Carolina to get Harbor. All right. It is not one of those things where it's like, yeah, well, maybe they'll have a shot. No, they're right in the middle of it all. They're right in the thick of things and how things play out. But Shane Beamer is saving that home visit. He's not used it yet. Saving that home visit, and they're going to use that for. Appreciate everyone bearing with us today, despite some of the technical difficulties. We're going to be able to figure that out. I think I know what one of the issues is, and I'll talk with Intern Joe about it. But Intern Joe, as always, buddy, appreciate it. Everyone that has been watching Gamecock, bless your hearts. I know it has not been easy, but on a brighter note, 2 brighter notes. 1, still got USC women's basketball. And 2, baseball is right around the corner. And a 3rd one, Bojangles is bringing some hard tea in the future. That's going to be down in the Carolinas. How about that? It's going to be dangerous.
All right.
Everyone have yourself a good week.
I got some exciting news coming.
We'll do it again.
Stay tuned. Exciting news on the horizon. Everybody.
Yeah. What is this Intern Joe news?
I can't tell you. It's on the
Intern Joe. What is this news?
I can't tell you. It's exciting news. Stay tuned. It's GC related. Some very, very exciting news. I'm really excited for it to come to light when it does. But yeah, I can't, Mike. I can't even tell you when we get off.
All right.
But yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. Stay tuned for that news.
Friggin' Intern Joe. All right, everybody. We'll do it again next Tuesday.